Firstly, there was a false narrative about why the refinery should be shut down and all the workers should be sent home. That false narrative was that Petrotrin was losing and will continue to lose $2 billion a year for the foreseeable future. Fact of the matter is that for the first 11 months of 2018 financial year, which would have ended at the end of September, up to the end of August, Petrotrin only lost $300 million. So for the last month, it would not have lost 1.7 billion. So it was not going to lose 2 billion. It was beginning to make a profit. Even SPD himself said in July sometime that the company had made a profit of $80 million for the second quarter of the financial year. So that was a false narrative. False narrative about the refinery is an absolute piece of old iron, like an old motor car, you should throw it away. Not true. All of those things were absolutely false. And they were false. Workers were being demonized and so on. People said the average wage was $45,000. Not true. And a whole set of things were being said that were just not true. That we are losing foreign exchange by having to import crude to refine. Of course, I didn't say that the refined products then earn foreign exchange. And I looked at the August management accounts of Petrotrin, and it showed that for the first 11 months of the year, Petrotrin spent 13 billion TT dollars on importing crude because you could identify foreign crude, the cost of foreign crude, and what was the local crude cost, and it earned $16 billion in export earnings. In other words, not what they sold in Trinidad and Tobago market, what they sold in CARICOM and elsewhere, which gave them a net foreign exchange of $3 billion for the first 11 months. So there was a whole set of things that were just not true. So there was a different agenda and motive in that regard. Now, the argument was that with the closure of the refinery, the exploration and production company, Heritage, will now be able to produce more oil and so on, and Paria, which will then sell that oil internationally and then import products that we will earn foreign exchange. Well, since the closure on the 30th of November, oil production has fallen. Why? Because all the workers were sent home. So there was nobody to man the platforms outside, to run the compressors and so on. So on the 30th of November, they were scrambling, calling up workers who had been retrenched on that day, calling fellows, come out to work tomorrow, come out to work tomorrow, we need you on the platform, because they didn't know, and production has fallen.
Probably hasn't picked back up yet.
Sorry?
Probably hasn't picked back up yet.
No, because when oil production falls, it takes some time even to try to get it back close to where it fell from. Right? That it's not like opening a tap and then turning it off and turning it back on, you get the same amount of water coming out. No. It takes time. When you lose production, it takes time to build it back up. So, and I am absolutely sure that the value of the imported products and so on is going to exceed the value of the products that the crude oil that we're exporting. We now have to import bitumen. So I see somebody saying, one of the ministers saying there's going to be a major road paving exercise coming down into 2019. But where they getting the bitumen from? They have to import it, right? To mix it with petroleum, Lake gas water, whatever it is. That's going to be a cost. Fishermen are complaining about no regular gasoline, regular fuel. And the cost of what they did, so they had to find over $2.7 billion to pay severance benefits. They had to find over $3 billion to fund the deficit in the pension fund, given the nature of what was done in selling of all the workers and so on, which is close to $6 billion or more, and which exceeds the amount of the $850 million US bullet payment. So they actually borrowed more than was required to pay off the loan, right? And they still have to pay off that $850 million bullet payment, US bullet payment, and the refinancing of that would have been government guaranteed, I'm absolutely sure, as all of the other borrowing. So what has happened now is that government guarantees and therefore contributions to the government debt, and therefore has gone up, and therefore our debt to GDP ratio has gone up, which is precisely what they were saying they were trying to avoid. Yeah. So it's just a whole mad thing, quite apart from the human loss in terms of individuals and the loss of valuable technical skills and so on, and knowledge that is being lost. and also the loss to the southern economy, which has been hard. If you're from Los Bajos,
I see the name called in places announced 2 days ago for consideration for residential as well as agricultural land, but the people down there who I'm talking to saying that they don't accept it. It may be, and this is the point I wanted to come to, you would think that because of all the anxiety that should have been presumed, given what the government decided it was going to do, that all these parts of the puzzle would have been worked out
beforehand.
But some of the things that are happening now, it's as though it is being made up in response to people's...
That's right, on the fly, which means that when, and therefore, you see, when yesterday went in the industrial court and gave evidence, up until early August, they were hiring people. The same Mr. Wiley was actually hired in August to run the new EMP unit that they were going to have. But it wasn't going to be this new company. It was going to be,
Petrotrin.
That's right. And they had hired somebody to run the refinery. Ended up paying him $1.7 million in lieu because he never came to work. So they had to buy out his contract, right? So up to early August, they were going along with a restructuring of Petrotrin. And then something happened between mid-August and the time they made that decision, or announced the decision, because they went to cabinet before the 28th of August.
Yes, later.
So they went to cabinet sometime about a week before that. And so something happened then. My sense is that the board was really pursuing a particular approach to restructuring. And then something else intervened. Now, Espinay said, well, what intervened is that they realized they didn't have the money to do all the work that had to be done. But they knew all the work that had to be done from, we in the Lashley Committee knew that a year before. The bullet payments were known, the work to be done on the ultra-low sulfur diesel plant was known, the asset integrity matters were known, the requirement for investment in EMP, all that was known. And when Douglas Mendel, senior counsel, cross-examined Espinay, he said, but didn't you know all of these things before? So what was different that caused you to make this decision? And he said, well, they didn't know where they were getting the money from. So, yeah, that was all. And there was no report produced by McKinsey. So there was no report that recommended the closure of the refinery and the sending of the workers. And so in my view, it comes back to the issue of a political decision to get rid of the union and to not just restructure Petrotrin, but re-engineer the society in such a way that capital has total control and sway, unregulated, and the losers will be working people.
So for good or bad, that is a strategic decision to follow a strategic direction that the country is being taken.
For economic and social development of the country.
Joseph, Remy, is that a point you want to come in at, or you come in at a point that you think this is the major issue you want to raise for 2018?
And then, well, Petrotrin is the number one issue for the year 2018, even from a credit union perspective, because within the Petrotrin environment, there are a number of credit unions who would have existed while they would have...
None of which is the Parasector Credit Union, which is right. in my neck.
While they would have opened their bonds, and the credit union have a particular resilience that allows them to survive under certain economic circumstances, but it did impact. We have Paliseco, we had Trintopinal, we had Zenith Credit Union, we had Antelis Credit Union, we had TechU. And now in the TSCT environment, we have 3 credit unions. We have Textel, we have telephone workers, and we have consolidated.
So when you say impact, give us a sense of what you mean.
Because some of those credit unions would have been reliant on salary remittance arrangement when they had loan arrangement with these members. And as such, when that stops, you have to go and do the whole rearrangement again. So in one time, your risk profile has changed incredibly, and as such, you have to go and reassess. That is now done in the midst of a new international financial reporting standard, IFRS 9, which demands that you do allocation for loan loss before you grant the loan, before you sign off final approval. So if you're taking a loan of $100,000 and you may be working in an environment where they believe the risk in your job might be high, you must make provisions for that up front. And as such, what it has done, it could erode the surplus that credit unions normally gain. which now interferes with the dividend.
And does it affect,
destroys the whole ethos of what
does it affect the live active membership of the credit union if this proportion of the membership now becomes retired and they're not contributing in the same kind of way?
It would have an impact, and that's why one of the positives is that some of those credit unions would have opened their bond to the wider public, so they don't just restrict their membership to employees of the industry. But it would have an impact, and I am consistent with what David is saying. To me, this is an attempt to reorganize the society and a redistribution of where the power lies. Too much power would have been resided in the working class and in institutions where the working class have a sway. Credit unions is one of those institutions where economic independence is of critical importance to the working class person. And as such, if we do that redistribution, it weakens the strength and the ability of credit unions to negotiate and advocate on behalf of the members. And this is something that we have to look at in terms of how the society is changing, and we have been lobbying our credit union members to let them know that they have to stand up to rebalance this thing, to bring it back to where it's supposed to be.
Is it fair to ask then if this is in 2018 what we have seen was a move towards that redefinition of the society that this administration has embarked upon?
Yeah. No, but if we have to do that, and definitely they have shifted the thing fundamentally away from what we knew it would to be of benefit to the wider society. And you are seeing now, because the same workers who are affected, they would have to rethink their approach when they doing business with the credit union movement. Yeah. And as such, the activity within the movement could be threatened in terms of the actual numbers of persons accessing loan facilities. And then we have a situation where there is a push to have credit unions regulated under the central bank. Because we still have an anomaly, I believe.
That has been in gestation for some years, but you see an amplification of the efforts.
That's right. And what you're seeing now is that they are strangling the Commissioner for Cooperative Development, which is a creature of an act, the Cooperative Societies Act, but whose commissioner must, on the basis of what the minister is saying now, take instructions from a minister. So we have a serious problem with that. And it is weakening the ability of us to take actions consistent with our world governing body, the World Council of Credit Unions, particularly with this IFRS 9, because they recommended that credit unions should not be subjected to the rigid application of IFRS 9, because credit unions are not publicly traded in the sense of the other speculative business industries, and as such, we should not be subject to that. And they recommended that while the government subscribed to IFRS 9, they also subscribe to the Basel Committee on Banking Regulations, and as such, there is an add-back facility they recommend for credit unions that we should use, which the banks are using. And the minister is saying that she has to go to cabinet for that, and we say, no, that is a regulatory issue. And as such, the regulator must give the decision. The regulator is saying to us, I can't do anything unless I get instructions from the minister. That is a frightening scenario.
Is it because, David, that this minister may not be as okra with those regulations and the rules that govern them, or because that's how the cabinet is insisting it operates?
It's because the cabinet is operating in that way. In other words, the balance of power within the cabinet, and therefore the interest that the Dr. Rowley government is protecting and advancing, those interests are the interests of big capital in this country. Absolutely no doubt about that. Whether it's Sanders, whether it is Petrotrin, if you look at what has happened in the Petrotrin situation, for example, it was said, workers could get a job in the new company, Heritage and Parry and so on. But Heritage and Parry are not hiring workers, except maybe a few managers and top people. They have labor supply contractors. So Kenson now has a labor supply contractor. Kenson's principal is Ken Ferguson, former PNM Mayor of San Fernando.
Yes.
Right? And he has a big energy services company and so on. So Kenson is hiring people as a labor supply contractor. One doesn't know how much Kenson is being paid per worker, but the workers are getting a fraction of what they would have gotten before doing the same job, and so on, with no benefits and that kind of thing. So you've reduced the oil industry to a BP-type model, which is labor supply contracts, which the Zinn-Henry Commission of Inquiry into Contract Labor in the early 70s,
then in the 70s,
right, recommended or stated that labor supply contracts are not far removed from indentured labor. So that's why I'm saying it's a restructuring of how labor, how workers are to be hired, the absence of workers' rights, the absence of trade unions, and therefore the maximizing of profits by a few. It's interesting that in Petrotrain, Robert Riley was a key consultant advisor, ex-BP TT-man. The head of the transition team was Lisa Ali, ex-BP. The chief financial officer who they brought in, Nigel Campbell, ex-BP. Who got the first contract to bring in fuel into the country? A BP subsidiary. No, I'm not saying that 1 + 1 + 1 equals 3. I'm just saying that these, so before anybody wants to hit with a pre-action protocol letter and hit the station, I'm just simply stating 4 facts. Right?
And there would have been strategic reasons for that. What the models that these people would have been familiar with and
precisely, that is a model that they obviously feel is what has to happen in the oil industry in Trinidad and Tobago. And so this is why I'm saying it is a restructuring of the society, because and therefore the Rowley P&M government is digging up the foundations that were laid down by the Williams P&M. Now, you were from the oil belt.
Yes.
Huge battles between Williams and Weeks in the 60s, right? And I mean, George Weeks and others, Nuevo Diaz and others were locked up, 2 states of emergency and so on.
Yeah.
But what the PNM tried to do was to have PNM people take over the union from inside. You had a strong PNM lobby, C.P. Barkley, who came from your area and so on, and then you had Bernard Edwards and
they had put Uriton Peer up against Weeks at one point.
65, right, that's right. And all of that was an attempt to control the unions, as they would have tried to control through people in Carlton, in Joe's former union, CW, and you had guys, Bernard Green and the other guys in Seaman and Waterfront even before him, other people.
And Critchlow in Huge.
Right, so that was their approach. And they tried that in order to it failed. But what they never tried to do was actually get rid of the trade union. In other words, there was a general recognition that for the progress of the society, strong unions were an important pillar of that. And it came out of the World War II social settlement in Europe and everywhere else of social democracy, that you needed to have workers' rights protected, that labor had to have a fair share, etc., and unions were an important participant in that whole process. But the neoliberal agenda in Europe, in the United States, and elsewhere is no unions or weak unions, and precarious work, contract labor.